In this lesson, we're going to be taking a look at solving systems of equations by graphing. Here you can see a system of equations. Now, we know it's a system of equations specifically. We use that term system because notice that bracket there off to the left-hand side. That's a way of connecting equations. It's a way of saying that these equations are related to each other, and therefore they actually have things in common potentially. And those things that are in common would actually be then considered solutions. We've dealt with stuff like this before. We've solved equations by graphing, where we've basically made a system of equations ourselves out of a single equation. The difference is that because we're starting with the system of equations, notice that both of these equations do indeed include both x and y, or at least they can include them. The second one doesn't include x, but that just means that that changes the shape of the graph, as we'll see here. So we're going to go ahead and graph our two equations just like we did when we were solving a single equation and splitting it into the two pieces. So I'm going to start in this particular case by graphing the y equals negative x plus 1 squared plus 5. Now, of course, it is a quadratic equation, and therefore we know it's going to be a parabola. And because it's negative out front of it, our parabola is going to be opening down. And of course, it'll start left 1 and up 5. Then we need to graph the second equation. And the second equation, y equals negative 4, notice there is no x in this particular equation, which means it's not only a line, but specifically a horizontal line. And in this case, a horizontal line that goes through a y-coordinate of negative 4, which is down here. So I now graph both of those two equations. And here you can see the graph that results from that. Once I've made the graph, I can now go and find my solutions. Now, just like when we were dealing with solving a single equation by graphing it as two separate equations, what we're looking for as the solutions here is the points where the two graphs cross. And remember, there could be many different numbers. They might not cross at all. They might cross once, twice, even more than that. In this particular case, our two graphs are going to cross twice, which tells me that there's going to be two solutions. Now, in the previous problems we did like this, the only thing in the original equation was x. So we only gave the x's. However, because this does include x and y, we're going to give both x and y for both of these points. So we're going to identify the coordinates of the points. Remember, when giving coordinates of a point, it is x, then y. And so for this first point here, the one on the left, my x coordinate here is negative 4. My y coordinate here is also negative 4. For the second point, the x coordinate, how far we're going over, is 2. So that's the number that goes first. And then the second coordinate, well, it's also down at negative 4, so that's going to be 2, negative 4. So those are the coordinates of our 2 points that we are interested in. Those 2 points are the solutions. In order to actually provide our answers then of those solutions, we will then list the coordinates. And since they are coordinates, yes, we do need the parentheses around them. So I will be putting in as my answer negative 4, negative 4 in parentheses. Then I put another comma to separate this point from the next point. And then I write in the next point, again, using the parentheses and all the coordinates there. So then this would be your answer. So like if you're doing a problem like this on WAMAP, that is exactly what you would type in. You have to have the parentheses around each point. The parentheses are the way of showing the first number is x, the second number is y. And then we put the comma between the 2 points to say, okay, now I'm starting a new point. All right, we're now going to go through 2 more examples of just the same basic process, but the same basic idea is going to be true for those as well. We're just seeing a couple more examples real quick. All right, so here is our next system. This is a great time to maybe pause the video and try doing this yourself before I go through it for you. All right, so if we are going to be solving this, of course, I have 2 equations. So I'm going to end up with two graphs. So I graph each equation, and once I've graphed each equation, then I need to look for any points where the two equations cross. In this case, I'm only seeing one point where they cross. So I'm going to grab the coordinates of that point. That looks like it's at 5, 2. Remember, the x-coordinate first, then the y-coordinate. That is over, then up. So since 5, 2 is the only point, that's what I'll type in as my answer, is 5, 2, with the parentheses around it, because in this case, yes, the first number is x and the second number is y. And that one's done. And now we move to our last example that we're going to be doing here together today. In this particular one, again, we have two equations. Therefore, we're going to have two graphs. So, and actually before I do this one, again, I recommend that you pause the video now and try working it out on your own. All right, so now let's go ahead and take a look at what we get out of this one. So when I graph each of these two equations, this is what I end up with. Now I look to see where do the graphs cross. And in this particular case, they actually cross in 3 different places. And so this one is actually going to have 3 different points as the solutions. And yes, we're just going to have to list out all 3 of them. I'm first just going to note on the graph what each point is, because I think it's going to make it a little bit simpler to be able to follow along with the work that we put in. So the first one is at negative 6, 1. The next point is at negative 5, 2. And then that last point there is at negative 2, 3. And so those are the points that I'm then going to list out when I go and input my final answer. In parentheses, it's negative 6, 1. Then I put a comma to say I'm going to another point. So then I do negative 5, 2, and the parentheses. And I do have another point, so that means another comma. And then I put in that point, negative 2, 3. Then that list of 3 points, that is my final answer. And that one would be now done.